and welcome back to the Charter School Innovation Series on Season 2 of the Get Schools on Public Education podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Baker, and remember, charter schools are free, public, and open to all. In today's episode, we learn more about two schools that have created unique and welcoming environments to improve outcomes for students. And by the end, we'll have the recipe to improve school culture and boost student achievement. We'll explore what it takes to create an environment for student success. The school leader you're about to meet says she was born to be an educator. From pretending to be a teacher as a child to actually leading a classroom as an adult for about 5 years and moving on to serve as an assistant principal for about 4 years to accepting a role as a principal in Abu Dhabi.
I spent about 5 years overseas as an educator there. I worked as a principal coach, and I was also the national tolerance representative where I helped schools to connect. So schools from different cultures, whether they were African or European or American schools, connect with the Arab schools so that we could do different projects and learn about different cultures. So after that experience, I relocated back home to Alabama, where I'm here now. And I learned about the charter movement that was going on here, and I just had to be a part of it.
Dr. Reneta C. Johnson is the Executive Director and Head of Schools at Legacy Prep in Birmingham, Alabama, serving grades K through 7, with plans to add a grade level each year, all the way up to the 12th grade. Legacy Prep is student-centered, community-focused, and impact-driven. Ultimately, it's the school culture which attracts many parents.
We are very intentional about providing individual learning for our scholars. And we have scholars that are from either end of the spectrum, whether they're advanced students or they're students that need more support. We are there to support them. And I think when parents realize that that is an option in education, to have educators who really drill down to your specific child and find their needs and support them, they couldn't help but to come and then tell their friends. And so now the culture that we have created with our families in our community has been very impactful to our growth.
Dr. Johnson attributes their strong relationship with parents and the community to a few key factors: being communicative, intentional, and engaging.
We are very intentional about making sure that we communicate things that are happening at the school. We invite our parents in, and we also give them a task. So if we're having family math night, we'll say, come on in, we'll teach you how to make a game. Your task for this game will be to bring these materials. And so that gets them excited because it's something that they're able to do, and they're also able to come in and learn. So through communication and the culture we've created with our parents and also our community partners, the same thing, communicating with them, inviting them in and showing them how they can be a part of our movement has been very impactful. And so it draws everyone from the community to our school.
And what were some of the challenges you faced when you began your tenure at your school, and how did you overcome them?
Oh, wow. The same thing that makes us successful now was the biggest challenge that I had. I came in, we are the first charter school in Birmingham. And so the school had only been in existence for 2 years. And so we had a transition in leadership. And so you had a group of people who really bought into the vision of the school. But as you know, anytime a new leader comes in, they're going to come with their own vision. And so trying to merge those visions together, get the buy-in that I needed was very, very challenging. The culture was already set. And so somebody coming in, there's that distrust and, why are they here and what do they have to bring and how can they support us? And so what we really did was intentionally focus on culture. We used Carter's 8 steps of change to, get people together, to let them know the sense of urgency that was needed, what we were trying to do, and just circle them back around to that vision. And so after a long year of being intentional, we were able to see the results because our parents, they trusted us and they knew even though there was a change in leadership, we still had the same mission and vision, and that was to support our scholars.
Legacy Prep's mission is to educate and empower their students to embrace their identity, lead lives of choice and opportunity, and impact their communities as the next generation of socially conscious leaders. And to create and maintain a positive and inclusive school culture, to that end, Dr. Johnson leads by example.
One of our models is that we focus on love, joy, and excellence. And so I know as the leader, I had to bring that to work with me. No matter if it was a rough day or a great day, I still had to show that love to everybody. I had to perform with joy, and I had to show them a level of excellence. And so once they saw me representing that, they want to know, hey, how do you do that? Like, what are the skills needed, or what's required, or what is joy in our school? What does that mean? And so then as a team, we were able to collaborate and build out what those things meant to us in our culture. And then it just trickled down to everybody. Like, this is joy. We come in, we teach with excitement. We challenge our scholars. We push them to the next level. And so once we were able to kind of, put a description on the words, then everybody was able to match those practices in their classrooms, just in their conversations. And we even see it in our scholars. So I would say it starts from the leadership, making sure that you're intentional about showing people what your expectations are, describing those expectations, showing examples of what it is and what it is not, and then pushing it out from all the way from the leadership all the way down to our scholars.
And student achievement has soared as a result of the Legacy team's intentional and consistent approach. Let's hear more about student progress and different strategies they were able to implement that helped to boost student performance.
Wow. Well, last year we had a phenomenal year academically. 93% of our third graders passed the state reading exam. And we surpassed the state average, which was 91. And so for a school like ours in the community that we serve, that's unheard of. And so we had to be very intentional about our practices. First and foremost, we started with data-driven instruction. So looking at our data and not just looking at numbers and say, hey, we need to work on reading. Those are things that are obvious, but really drilling down what skills in reading. Why is there a deficit? Why is there a gap? And one thing we learned was that our teachers needed more support. And so we took all of our K-3 teachers and had them to go through the science of reading training and saw how that transitioned their teaching into the next level. In addition to that, we had coaches for the teachers. So we realized that if we support our staff, they can better support our scholars. And so with the coaching, the additional training, we saw that trickle down to our scholars where they were able to repeat some of the lessons they were learning. They were able to identify their own deficits and then come up with plans of how they were going to be successful in their own way.
Now let's listen to a story about a scholar and his transformation, both academically and behaviorally while at Legacy Prep.
Yeah, I have one of my favorite scholars, and everybody said he's just your favorite, but he just has a phenomenal story. I remember we both came in the same year, brand new. He actually lives 50 miles away from the school. He lives in a whole nother city, and his parents were driving him here every single day. And I would just stand in front of the school, normal, in the morning, greeting my scholars. And every morning he would stop and he would say, hey, let me tell you about my football game this weekend. These are some goals that I have. But once he got inside the building, he had a lot of difficulties with the transition, with his behavior, with his academics. And so the first thing I did was just talk to him like, hey, what do you need? Why are you acting like this? And he just went on to just tell me about his background and how he was traveling back and forth and just some personal difficulties that he was dealing with. And so I would just check on him. I got our team together, his teachers all lend a hand. His mom and dad were all involved. And now he's one of our top scholars. We have no more behavior problems from him. He's actually one of our leaders in our entrepreneur program. He has launched his own hat and t-shirt business and sold out at our first event. And so we're just very proud of how we were able to just work with him individually, learn about not only his academic needs, but his social and emotional needs, and how we as a team were able to come around him, come up with a plan, and watch him realize that all these people are here to support me and watch him grow and flourish.
I love that example of how the school community, teachers, leaders, the staff, parents, all rallied around a scholar to support their needs. Looking ahead, here's some things we have to look forward to coming from Legacy Prep.
Wow. So we are very excited. Next school year, we will be opening our middle school, which is going to be an extension of our elementary program. In the future, we are going to partner with some of our local colleges so that we can open our high school. One of our big goals as an organization is to branch out and develop more sites within the state. So right now we're in Central Alabama. We may want to go to South Alabama or North Alabama, but first create a model that's sustainable and be able to replicate that throughout the state so we can have an even greater impact.
Our next school leader was honored as a 2024 Charter School Changemaker by the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools. Zak Dominello is the Executive Director at Ricardo Flores Magón Academy in Colorado. As a teenager, Zak worked at a summer camp where he discovered his passion for working with children. He learned the importance of educating and caring for the whole child and the importance of helping to meet their individual needs to set them up for success.
From there, I continued working at a camp throughout my college career. I graduated in neuroscience. At that point, I still wasn't sure if I was going to use that neuroscience degree, but ended up going into science education with a master's. And from there, got a job working in special education. So I started off as a para. I went on to be a teacher and then administrator within that field. And although it's not something I think I'd go back to, I learned so much about educating with the best practices, because in all honesty, the practices you use in special education are practices that all students can benefit from. So after doing that for a couple of years, having moved from Connecticut to Colorado, I stumbled on a position at Ricardo Flores Magón Academy. And from there, it was history. This is something that I was meant to do.
For many parents who choose to enroll their students at Ricardo Flores Magón Academy, it's the experience some wish they had as a student. And as a former teacher, I can also relate. I remember looking at the curriculum my first year, and my first thought flipping through the pages was, wow. I was impressed with the content and the resources for early childhood and wished that they were able to have these tools when I was a kid. And I was excited to get started and teach them to my own students.
Parents choose our school because we really do stand out. We are different. And I think the number one thing that I hear from parents is, I wish I had a school like this when I was younger. Most of the time when parents are saying that, they're referencing the struggles that they had in education. They're referencing, and I'll hear it often, of when I went to school, I was placed in a separate classroom for students that were learning language that felt so off from the rest of the school. I was alienated. I was different. I was eating different. I looked different. And when they walk into our school, they know they're home. Whether that's the representation, whether that's the faces greeting you at the door, whether that's the ability to come into classrooms when you want to. It's just one of those things that we want to be a home for parents. We want to be a resource, a support. And I'd say that's the first level. I think the second level, that how we keep kids, is we continue to support them in every way possible. So if there's an issue or a student's doing really well, we continue to push that. So we're going to solve the inequity. We're going to try to get you here, whether it's transportation, it's food, doctors. We're going to work to set that up. And on the flip side, if you need additional support, you want to stay after for tutoring, for sports, for a leadership group, we'll provide that too. So I think really trying to be that one-stop shop for all families. But I think the first thing we hear is, this feels like home. This is a place that I wish I had as a kid. And, for that, it's priceless.
The partnership that is critical in the success of scholars is that between the instructors and the parents. As a teacher, one of the best ways that we can support students is by enabling the parents with the tools they may need to adapt and reinforce the academic needs of their children. The team at Ricardo Flores Magón Academy works closely with parents to meet the needs of students.
So kinder, first, second, you have to pick up your student in the classroom. So you're coming in every day, you're parking your car, you're talking to the families, you're talking to the students, you're talking to the teachers, you're seeing administrators every day, you're being welcomed in. And with that, you're catching the flyers. You're seeing the parent groups that volunteer. You're stumbling onto a sports, whether it's a game or practice or what's going on. So the first is inviting the parents in. The second is keeping them. So giving different purposes. We have volunteer groups. We have a pipeline to our board of directors. We have a parent group that meets every 2 weeks to talk about, what do you feel like is going right in the school? Where do you see struggles? Are there areas that are concerning to you? Are there areas that you think we're doing really well? Let's celebrate it. Outside of that, we have parents that just come in because they want to. That's volunteering. It's recess duty. It's making copies. It's helping out in the front office. Like, it's that community feel. And, we have such a pipeline of community to employee as well, because we want to hire people that also represent the school. And I think that that's a huge piece of our hiring practices. We created a rubric for parents to actually give observation feedback to teachers, which I know is kind of scary. And I think that traditionally, like, teachers hear that and they would be like, heck no, I do not want that. And then you look on the other end and you have teachers that say, this parent's here to help, but they're also here to give feedback. And, when we hear something from parents, we respond to it. We invite them in. We try to solve that. And believe me, it's a lot of parent meetings, but it's worth it.
As you can imagine, it took a lot of work to build and strengthen those relationships. Zak first started out as the assistant principal at the school, and he shared with us some of the challenges he faced when he first started.
About 2 or 3 weeks into my tenure as assistant principal, they had hired a new executive director here at the school that served as the executive director and principal, and they weren't making the right choices for the community. And now, having it not had been my community at that point, it was very hard for me to weigh in. I'm coming in as a guest to the community. I'm learning. I'm meeting new people. But the community was really concerned with COVID protocol and safety. They were concerned with respect for their children. They were concerned with respect for staff. And it was a big deal. And I kind of point back to this story as the most Ricardo Flores Magón Academy example possible, in that the staff and the students stood up and said, we're not going to stand for this. They actually demonstrated a walkout. They walked out of the building. They stopped school for the day. But it was the best demonstration of our values that I've ever seen. You look at Ricardo Flores Magón, who was a Mexican anarchist in the revolution, and talked about community support, talked about uprising, talked about supporting our people, supporting our community, standing up against those injustices. And it was before my eyes happening. And throughout every step of the way, I worked with the parents, I worked with the teachers. While the executive director was on leave and stepped back, I took over for that amount of time and, did what I thought was right, which was meet the community, hear their interests, hear their needs, what they needed to do. And, it was a whirlwind.
At the time, Zak served as interim executive director for the first 6 months, and by the end of that year, he became the full-time executive director.
I point that back to a pivotal moment for the school, for my own learning, and for a lot of growth that happened of, this is what a community is supposed to be like. You're supposed to have the interest, the power, the ability to make those decisions in your school, because that's where you're sending your kids. And when I think about charters, I believe that experience is probably pretty uniquely charter. I don't think that you can necessarily have that in the traditional public school system with the way that their systems work, but it was parent voice. And I think I've taken that with me every step of the way to say, when I make this decision, I need to talk to the community. I need to see if this is best for their children. And I think the second piece of a challenge was truly, I was a guest in this community. And for that, I needed to listen. I needed to learn. I needed to build and make the right decisions. And that was tough. There was a lot of pressure after what I had seen for the first tenure for executive director. But, everything that I had learned up till that point helped prepare me.
And with that momentum, Zak and his team continued to push for excellence, creating initiatives to help boost student achievement.
So we had a lot of different initiatives, but I think the main one was getting back to rigorous first level instruction. So that very first level of classroom education, we're taking a look at our lesson plans, we're internalizing them, we're making sure that our lessons have language bridges and that we're translanguaging in an appropriate way. Because with our student population, we're majority multi-language learners, and that adds a different challenge to the classroom. With that, especially when you're working with some teachers that are not bilingual or that are not familiar with Spanish in the same way that some others are, it becomes difficult to plan, to think in a different language, to think about a different language. So our strategies were like dual-fold. We went heavy, everyday, great first level instruction. And then second was, how can we bring the multi-language supports to everyone? Because it really needs to be MLL all day. So we were able to do both. Really proud because we got our data back this last year and we were in the top of our portfolio of growth for English language learners.
In addition to boosting student achievement, the school has launched various initiatives aimed at strengthening student voices.
We implemented a full new restorative justice system a year and a half ago. We sat with students in middle school and said, what do you want to support your community? What do you need to support yourself? And came up with a resolution. We did a community code of conduct that applies for everyone. So it's not just, I think you'd probably hear the typical thing of parents interacting with teachers, but it is how teachers interact with students. It's how students interact with students. It's how students interact with parents. And it has everything from assuming and assessing best intent to speaking with clarity, to speaking with respect, and very clearly defines what we expect from our community. And we'll sit down and review that before meetings. We'll talk about it. We'll make sure this is how we are going to hold ourselves accountable in this way.
And while their team is building change makers, they're also creating a safe and welcoming environment for their surrounding community, especially to those who are new to it.
Denver had a lot of migration from Central America, countries like Venezuela. And, it was labeled in the news as this migrant crisis. It was labeled as a problem. And, that didn't sit right with me, because you're talking about people who are refugees, who are escaping situations, who are looking for better conditions or a variety of other reasons. We welcomed 25 plus new students to the school. Mid-year, we were able to get additional supports. We were able to hire in different ways. We were able to, just by nature of our staff population, of having 70% staff that are bilingual, having 70% staff that are people of color, that fit our community, it was seamless. Because the majority of people at our school have been a newcomer at some point. So to welcome more newcomers was a celebration, was to be able to relate, was to be able to share an experience. And when we as a community feel passionate about something, we get together and we make it happen. And whether that was fundraising for court fees, whether that was providing transportation, whether that was supporting with housing or jobs, or making sure that people could live and that their children could be provided for, that's our mission and vision. So it was just what we did.
Looking ahead, Zak envisions his school as playing a much larger role in the community.
I want it to be the center of the community, so that parents say, I can go to that school and I will get what I need. Whether that's support with health, medical, food, therapy, laundry, haircuts. Like, I want people to be able to say, I can get it at Ricardo Flores Magón Academy. And I think, when we're looking at that, I want the school to be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't want to work those hours, although I think as school leaders we do most of the time. But, I want to be able to staff in the morning and at night. I want to be able to have people come in for activities. We, for the first time, were able to actually hire someone that works 10 to 7. So now we have additional after-school programming, clubs, parent programming, different activities after school. And it starts with one person, and then it grows from there. But that's the kind of school we need. That's what schools were meant to be. And
in the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools 2023 report, Listen to Your Teacher, an analysis of teacher sentiment on the state of public education, 96% of charter school teachers reported feeling aligned with their school's culture in terms of education, values, and beliefs. These schools that you heard from today are strong examples of the type of schools that are deeply committed to serving students, families, and their surrounding communities. And if you're looking to support these schools, you can donate to their websites. Legacy's Prep website is legacyprepal.org, and Ricardo Flores Magón Academy's website is magonacademy.org. A very special thank you to Dr. Reneta C. Johnson, Executive Director at Legacy Prep in Alabama, and Zak Dominello, Executive Director of Ricardo Flores Magón Academy in Colorado, for joining the podcast. Thank you for listening to our Charter School Innovation Series. I'm your host, Brittany Baker, and remember, charter schools are free, public, and open to all.
Produced by Heartcast Media.